I have come back after how many months away. Um, I want to talk about Legendborn. So, this is a YA novel that released in September 15th of 2020. And I I don't know why my camera just froze. And I did not really want to read it because I was 21 at the time and I've definitely aged out of the YA kind of mindset. I think during that time I also read like Clockwork Angel. I don't know, but even then, I was like, I'm not really feeling it. I'm not really feeling the high stakes and teenage drama that comes with these books. So I kind of have like aged out of it, and so I didn't really give this book a try. But I was really excited for it because it's a POC, black protagonist, um, YA book. It is a black author, and I was just so excited, at least for how the industry was changing, and it's finally showing these things like how with Asian Americans also creating their own YA books or just general fiction, and I was really excited for that. But I was just like, it's not really for me. But a month ago, I decided to read it because me and my friend wanted to try the buddy read system on Storygraph. And we were like, "Oh, let's see a book which one like we both haven't read or finished and let's like try to finish it." And my friend she has read Legendborn or at least half of it, and then she dropped it. And I was like, "Oh, you know what? Maybe we can both like you can attempt again and then I can read it alongside you." And so we read it, and she once again dropped it. And I toughed it out and I read the whole book. And I don't know how to say this as nice and politely as I can, but this book just is a lot. It's it's actually, if I were to kind of like explain it, it is kind of like a CW show. Given how much happens in this book, even by the midway point, and then you realize, holy crap, there's a whole 50% left of the book. Like, how much more stuff can happen? Um, and in some books, that's fine. It's great. Like last off the top of my head, Uprooted by Naomi Novik, one of my favorite authors. She like that book has stuff happening all the time, and it's great. You're in for a treat. And because the plot is just so cohesive, the pacing is great, is delectable. Um that's not I can't say that about Legendborn. I can't say that about Legend because the whole book is dealing with the protagonist, dealing with her grief, and also dealing with finding out things about her mother and trying to find her ancestors and her history. And I this is a good thing about this book is that it doesn't shy away from things that could make like white people very uncomfortable. And it talks about like how much slavery has kind of destroyed these African Americans from learning about their heritage and learning about, you know, the people that came before them because records weren't being kept, and there's just so many people like moving around and all of that, and like the histories and bloodlines, etc., which you will find out is very important in this book. Dion, the author, she makes a very poignant um lesson. I like theme here. I don't know, my brain can't think. In that it is so sad and scary to not know where you came from and then be surrounded by all of these white people who can trace back their lineage like thousands of years ago. It is a very stark contrast between the two, and she is constantly like shown as one of the only black people like in this in the community and in this setting. There is one other prominent or actually two more prominent black characters in this first book at least. In the sequel we get introduced to more characters, but in this first book we have her psychiatrist. I believe her it was called Dr. Patricia Hartwood, I could be wrong. And a minor character is her dad, but there he does like kind of show up from time to time, at least like mentioned or talked about. And so there's a huge contrast between her and how she feels kind of like an outsider in more ways than one. So the whole premise of Legendborn, let me actually read this Goodreads. So after her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like the perfect escape, until Bree witnesses a magical attack her very first night on campus. A flying demon feeding on human energies, a secret society of so called Legendborn students that hunt the creatures down, and a mysterious teenage mage who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memory of everything she saw. The mage's failure unlocks Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory with a hidden connection. The night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows there's more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth, even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of their initiates. She recruits Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn with his own grudge against the group, and their reluctant partnership pulls them deeper into the society's secrets and closer to each other. But when the Legendborn reveal themselves as the descendants of King Arthur's knights and explain that a magical war is coming, Bree has to decide how far she'll go for the truth and whether she should use her magic to take the society down or join the fight. And so, just a really quick recap. Yes, there is a love triangle as always in these YA trilogies. I didn't particularly like hate it in this one. I'm actually not someone who hates love triangles I love love triangles. Like, give me more. I never could like vibe with the girlies who said that like they don't like love triangles and it's like it's so immature. Who cares? Give me the more cute boys the better. Okay. Yes, I do have a favorite. Yes, it is Cell. No, it is not Nick. And basically all of Legendborn is kind of like it's like non-stop action when it's talking about the Arthur things, and then it screeches to a halt when the unlocks Bree's own unique magic side of the story comes out. And this is the coolest part about Legendborn. I no joke, if this whole book was about this, I would have liked it a lot more. I did not care about the King Arthur side, which is so sad because that's literally the entire premise of this whole quartet. Um, so Bree's own unique magic that they refer to here in the synopsis is actually a thing called root magic in this story. It is it's typically Black Americans using the like or borrowing the powers of their ancestors that were former slaves in this country, and they're using that power for like very small things, like either like protection or fortune telling or talking to the dead as a medium, or doing like or healing or growing plants, etc. Like very non-aggressive magic. They're very defensive and very supportive in terms like it's just I think it's beautiful. I love it. I love what she did with like this idea of kind of like taking back using that suffering as a source of strength to get the current living descendants, to the next day and making the world a better place and a more peaceful place. I loved that. However, to the detriment of the King Arthur storyline, anytime Bree is doing her root magic thing with her psychiatrist, who is as I previously mentioned, a black professor. Sorry, that's my cat. A black professor at this college, kind of trying to help Bree with her grief. It screeches to a halt. Like the plot stops, and it kind of is like, okay, well, the King Arthur stuff was all or, like kind of dragging on, and there's so much drama. There's so much drama going on that side. And then you have the root magic kind of like forcing its way into like the book. Even though like it has a reason to be there, but it felt so disconnected from what she was going through with the King Arthur stuff that I don't know. I kind of wish it was like connected a little bit better or introduced a little bit better, or I don't know. My my very it's like my very drastic like suggestion to this like is that if she had just set this in the medieval times, or maybe set it in a time where everybody knew about King Arthur and everybody knew that they were real and everybody knew that they had to fight these like shadowborn monsters, it would have been a lot better. I think having it act like a Percy Jackson kind of like setting where, oh, like these ancient things have just adapted to modern like life and set and the setting, it didn't work here because she didn't really like Dion did not adapt shit. Dion wrote people who were descendants of King Arthur and then said, all right, that's about it, and then said we'll have the round table, that's about it. That was the extent to the adaptation. Whereas in Percy Jackson, it was like you had the Lotus Hotel, you had the Camp Half Blood, you had stuff that were like actually adapted, and it made the story a lot more cohesive than unfortunately what Legendborn did. And then my other suggestion to like make me like this book more is if they just got rid of the King Arthur thing completely and leaned in 100% into the root magic, because that is the coolest thing, and it was the only thing that made me interested in the story. I was not interested about the King Arthur stuff. It felt so like it was like barely there were any effort put in, I think, on behalf of the author. But you could tell she put in so much effort into making the root magic feel real and feel like impactful, and I loved it. So yeah, that's my hot take. I don't care about the King Arthur stuff. And if I told you Bree turned out to be the descendant of King Arthur through the product of violence, I can't say that word, but through violence, would you even be a little surprised? Like, I'm not really that surprised. When I read it, I was like, oh yeah, of course she is. Um, it felt a little bit out of place, honestly, that reveal. Even though I wasn't really surprised. Okay, so moving on from the plot issues and the pacing, let's talk about the romance, because of course it's a YA, so you have to talk about the romance. It is really, really obvious to me that Nick is an endgame, and for people who actually think that, get your eyes checked. I have read so many books. I have read so many YA romance adjacent books. Like if you gave me the amount of angst and tension that she has with Selwyn Kane, I would be like, oh, immediate. I would boop. That's the guy. Of course, this isn't true with like Shadow and Bone, which is not a good trilogy. With the because the Darkling deserve better. But anyway, Nick has no chance, bro. Like he's just a generic like blonde hair, blue eye boy who is apparently the descendant of King Arthur in the beginning, then realizes he wasn't actually. He's actually Lancelot. And Bree for some reason is just super attracted to yeah, he's like really nice and he is like sacrificing a lot for her, but like what does he provide that like her best friend can't? Like I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, speaking of her best friend, Alice, oh my gosh, she's Taiwanese. She's cool, I guess. She is really like the sister that Brie never had, and like she really I think Alice is a great character. I have no qualms or objections to her. Okay, so aside from Legendborn, I'll just wrap this video up a little fast. But I read Bloodmarked. However, I didn't really read it at the same time. I honestly, at that point, I was already checked out of the series. I was like, yeah, the series isn't doing it for me. I don't know if this is her debut series or not. Maybe her writing will get better after this series. I'm down to try other books from her. I just don't really care for the universe in this one. But I read Bloodmarked, and that too has a lot of pacing issues and so much plot. Like and that one for sure, I was like, oh yeah, the book's ending soon, right? And I was reading it on my ebook. And I tapped the screen to check how many pages left. And I'm like, what do you mean I still have 45% left of the book to go? Like I thought I finished it. I thought it was going towards the conclusion or something. But no. Anyway, so I skimmed the book. I skimmed the book entirely just for Cell's scenes, which, by the way, great scenes. I love him. My friend did not really care for either Nick or Cell. Whatever, but I was in the mood. I was in the mood to like the Wattpad ass boyfriend character that is Cell. He is, okay? Like, whoever, if you want to argue to me that he isn't, he is, okay? He is. And yeah, that's it. I didn't really read much of the book. We are introduced finally to the council that governs everything that has to do with the Legendborn and their secret society of King Arthur stuff. They are, of course, like old white people, and that's about it. I will say there is one thing I will say about this series is that a lot of the racism that is prevalent in this book coming from the white characters to Brie is very, I felt like a strawman's argument. Like the author perfectly crafted this situation to be very racist towards Brie. Um and I didn't really feel I have a thing where I'm like, I don't like it when like fictional books set in the modern world kind of tackle like racism and like sexism and stuff from fictional characters um based on like entirely arbitrary rules that they set and the author created to be really racist towards the black character, to like the POC or the protagonist. It felt like it doesn't feel like genuine. I don't know. I read it and I was just like, yeah, I guess it feels very in character for them to be racist, because you know their whole entire purpose is to be racist. Like the whole entire reason why this character is the way they are is because they were already pre-programmed to be racist. Like there was no other reason for them to exist than to be racist. Like does that make sense? I don't know. Maybe like it just isn't. I don't know. It felt so out of place. It felt like it really didn't have a need to be in there. For instance, there's this like one section. I said I was gonna end this video soon, but I'm not. I'm just rambling. But it says in this one section that Brie is being like interrogated by the council, and she's being held kidnapped. She's held prisoner by the council because they want to like experiment on her and like find out her root magic and like understand, and like they want to again, lots of racist stuff that the author made them do because their entire purpose is to be racist. Okay, anyway. And so there's this one conversation where she's talking to like the head council member, and he's like, I just don't understand how we could have a black person as the descendant of King Arthur, because their whole shtick is that the council, like, is really strict about the bloodlines. Like, they try to keep everyone, like, not mix up the bloodlines, because then they won't, like, they aren't able to figure out, oh, who's King Arthur and who's Lancelot. So if you have like a Lancelot and King Arthur descendants like Mary, then they don't know the heir, like if the heir belongs to the King Arthur line or if the heir belongs to King Lancelot. So there's like that kind of like contrived rule. And so they're talking about how the heck did they like did not see this coming. And then which I have another, let's put a point in that, okay? So anyway, so they try to keep the bloodlines pure, and they're like pure, you know, in the sense of like they have to all be white, but like not necessarily they have to be white. They just have to have the bloodline of whoever it is in them. And Brie is like, you know how I came to be, okay? I am a product of violence. I, like, my ancestor got RAPED by the descendant of Arthur, like, I don't know, 200 years ago or something like that. And and then you get like a scene of like these council old white people being very uncomfortable, and one council member like pops up and goes like, well, I just can't believe that they all talk in the southern accent. This is my take on it. I just can't believe that such a distinguished descendant of King Arthur could ever do something like that. And then the only white council member jumps in and goes like, the female council member jumps in and goes like, oh really? You can't believe that a man would do something like that? And then I felt like when I read that scene, I was like, this is a joke, right? this is like, it felt so weird that this like, just because she's a female, whatever, like this council member would just jump in and be like, oh no, yeah, I believe all men are like monsters. All men can be monsters. When it's like, yo, you're hella racist. And like, I get that the author was probably trying to say that, like, you know, sexism and racism are not necessarily like mutually exclusive. Like, you can be one thing but not the other or whatever. But it was just like, that scene just made me, I was just like, I'm okay, we're skipping. I don't need this to be like, I understand that the target demographic of this book is not to people like me who know the intricacies of society and like race dynamics in this country. It is definitely towards young kids who don't really understand or don't know how to read microaggressions. Like, if they were to see a microaggression, they wouldn't see that it's a microaggression. I understand that. It's spelled very clearly. I just didn't really like how it was done. And again, this feeds back into my opinion that if I had read this 10 years ago, I would have liked it a lot more. Okay, so let's unpin that. The council has this thing about keeping the bloodlines pure. They track every like child, they track every match, like marriage, whatever. And yet, obviously, it's not as tight as people, like, it's not as perfect as people like assume, because here's Brie, the evidence that things like cannot be as perfectly controlled as you want it to be. And I just have a question. Why didn't the council just inbreed? I know, I'm not saying I'm encouraging, but I'm just saying, if you want to make sure that your bloodline is, you know, pure, then why don't you just inbreed? Because there are like these things called page families, people who serve the Legendborn, who like fight alongside the Legendborn when they need to fight against the shadow monsters or whatever, and those people are also being like, you know, fed into the system. But I'm like, So are so maybe like distant cousins do marry each other because like there's only so many people that are in the know of the Shadowborn world, and like you kind of want to keep like the knowledge base like tight and controlled and small. Like you don't want things to leak out and whatever. But I'm just saying, why isn't there inbreeding? Okay. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Legendborn and Bloodmarked. I don't know. I think I'm probably gonna like read the next few books, but like in the sense that I'm just gonna skim until I read Cell's name, and then I'll read from there, and then once it's not Cell, we're just gonna skip on through. But yeah, I wish I liked this a lot more than I do. It's just too much, and the pacing's pretty bad. Um, yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is a new little concept. I think I like it a lot actually. So, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and like I don't know, keep on. Blah, 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 blah. Bye.